Now we are going to read the text of Salman Rushdie's The Free Radio, page at 71 of the book, The Best Guide, composed by Dr. A. Kalam, mobile number 743-286-0010. We all knew nothing good would happen to him while the thief's widow had her claws dug into his flesh, but the boy was an innocent, a real donkey's child. You can't teach such people. That boy could have had a good life. God had blessed him with God's own looks, and his father had gone to the grave for him, but didn't he leave the boy a brand new first-class cycle rickshaw with plastic-covered seats and all? So, looks he had, his own trade he had, there would have been a good wife in time. He should just have taken out some years to save some rupees, but no, he must fall for a thief's widow before the hairs had time to come out on his chin, before his milk teeth had split, one might say. We felt bad for him, but who listens to the wisdom of the old today? I say, who listens? Exactly, nobody, certainly not a stonehead like Ramani the rickshawwala. But I blame the widow. I saw it happen, you know. I saw most of it until I couldn't stand any more. I sat under this very banyan, smoking this self-same hookah, and not much escaped my notice. And at one time I tried to save him from his fate, but it was no go. The widow was certainly attractive, no point denying, in a hard vicious way she was all right, but it is her mentality that was rotten. 10 years older than Ramani she must have been, 5 children alive and 2 dead. What that thief did besides robbing and making babies God only knows, but he left her not one new paisa, so of course she would be interested in Ramani. I'm not saying a rickshawwala makes much in this town, but 2 mouthfuls are better to eat than wind. And not many people will look twice at the widow of a good-for-nothing. They met right here. One day Ramani rode into town without a passenger, but grinning as usual as if someone had given him a 10-chip tip, singing some playback music from the radio, his hair greased like for a wedding. He was not such a fool that he didn't know how the girls watched him all the time and passed remarks about his long and well-muscled legs. The thief's widow had gone to the banya shop to buy some 3 grains of dal, and I won't say where the money came from, but people saw men at night near her rutputty shack, even the banya himself, they were telling me, but I personally will not comment. She had all her 5 brats with her, and then and there, cool as a fan, she called out, "Hey! Ricks HAAA!" Loud, you know, like a truly cheap type. Showing us, she can afford to ride in rickshaws, as if anyone was interested. Her children must have gone hungry to pay for the ride, but in my opinion, it was an investment for her, because must be she had decided already to put her hooks into Ramani. So, they all poured into the rickshaw and he took her away, and with the 5 kiddies as well as the widow there was quite a wait, so he was puffing hard, and the veins were standing out on his legs, and I thought, careful, my son, or you will have this burden to pull for all of your life. But after that Ramani and the thief's widow were seen everywhere, shamelessly, in public places, and I was glad his mother was dead, because if she had lived to see this her face would have fallen off from shame. Sometimes in those days Ramani came into the street in the evenings to meet some friends, and they thought they were very smart because they would go into the back room of the Irani's canteen and drink illegal liquor, only of course everybody knew, but who would do anything? If boys ruin their lives, let their relations worry. I was sad to see Ramani fall into this bad company. His parents were known to me when alive. But when I told Ramani to keep away from those hotshots he grinned like a sheep, and I was wrong. Nothing bad was taking place. Let it go, I thought. I knew those cronies of his. They all wore the armbands of the new 19 Youth Movement. This was the time of the state of emergency, and these friends were not peaceful persons. There were stories of beatings up, so I sat quiet under my tree. Ramani wore no armband, but he went with them because they impressed him, the fool. These armband youths were always flattering Ramani. Such a handsome chap, they told him, compared to you Shashi Kapoor and Amitabh are like lepers only, you should go to Bombay and be put in the motion pictures. They flattered him with dreams because they knew they could take money from him at cards and he would buy them drink while they did it, though he was no richer than they. So now Ramani's head became filled with these movie dreams, because there was nothing else inside to take up any space, and this is another reason why I blame the widow woman, because she had more years and should have had more sense. In 2 ticks she could have made him forget all about it, but no, I heard her telling him one day for all to hear, "Truly you have the looks of Lord Krishna himself, except you are not blue all over." In the street. So, all would know they were lovers. From that day on I was sure a disaster would happen. The next time the thief's widow came into the street to visit the banya shop I decided to act. Not for my own sake but for the boy's dead parents. I risked being shamed by no, I will not call her the name, she is elsewhere now and they will know what she is like. "Thief's widow!" I called out. She stopped dead, jerking her face in an ugly way, as if I had hit her with a whip. "Come here and speak," I told her. Now she could not refuse because I am not without importance in the town, and maybe she calculated that if people saw us talking, they would stop ignoring her when she passed, so she came as I knew she would. "I have to say this thing only," I told her with dignity. "Ramani the rickshaw boy is dear to me, and you must find some person of your own age, or, better still, go the Windows ashrams in Banaras and spend the 20 rest of your life there in holy prayer, thanking God that widow burning is now illegal." So, at this point she tried to shame me by screaming out and calling me curses and saying that I was poisonous old man who should have died years ago. Then she said, "Let me tell you, Mr. Teacher Sahib retired, that your Ramani has asked to marry me and I have said no, because I wish no more children, and he is a young man and should have his own. So, tell that to the whole world and stop cobra poison." For a time after that I closed my eyes to this affair of Ramani and the thief's widow, because I had done all I could and there were many other things in the town to interest a person like myself. For instance, the local health officer had brought a big white caravan into the street and was given permission to park it out of the way under the banyan tree, and every night men were taken into this van for a while and things were done to them. I did not care to be in the vicinity at these times, because the youths with armbands were always in attendance, so I took my hookah and sat in another place. I heard rumors of what was happening in the caravan but I closed my ears. But it was while this caravan, which smelled of ether, was in town that the extent of the widow's wickedness became plain, because at this time Ramani suddenly began to talk about his new fantasy, telling everyone he could find that very shortly he was to receive a highly special and personalized gift from the central government in Delhi itself, and this gift was to be a brand new first-class battery-operated transistor radio. Now then, we had always believed that our Ramani was a little soft in the head, with his notions of being a film star and what all, so most of us just nodded tolerantly and said, "Yes, Ram, that is nice for you, and, what a fine, generous government it is that gives radios to persons who are so keen on popular music." But Ramani insisted it was true, and seemed happier than at any time in his life. A happiness which could not be explained simply by the supposed imminence of the transistor. Soon after the dream radio was first mentioned, Ramani and the thief's widow were married, and then I understood everything. I did not attend the nuptials. It was a poor affair by all accounts, but not long afterwards I spoke to Ram when he came past the banyan with an empty rickshaw one day. He came to sit by me and I asked, "My child, did you go to the caravan? What have you let them do to you?" "Don't worry," he replied. "Everything is tremendously wonderful. I am in love, Teacher Sahib, and I have made it possible for me to marry my woman." I confess I became angry. Indeed, I almost wept as I realized that Ramani had gone voluntarily to subject himself to a humiliation which was being forced upon the other men who were taken to the caravan. I reproved him bitterly. "My idiot child, you have let that woman deprive you of your manhood. It is not so bad, Ram said, nearing the Nasbandai. It does not stop lovemaking or anything, excuse me, Teacher Sahib, for speaking of such a thing. It stops babies only, and my woman did not want children anymore, so now all is 100% okay. Also, it is in national interest, he pointed out. And soon the free radio will arrive. The free radio, I repeated. Yes, remember, Teacher Sahib, Ram said confidentially, some years in my kiddie days, when Lakshman the tailor had this operation. In no time the radio came, and from all over town people gathered to listen to it. It is how the government says thank you. It will be excellent to have. Go away, get away from me, I cried out in despair, and did not have to tell him what everyone else in the country already knew, which was that the free radio scheme was a dead duck, long gone, long forgotten. It had been overfunded for years. Ending of the page 77 of the book, The Best Guide, composed by Dr. A. Callum, mobile number 743-286-0010. Now we are going to read the text of Salman Rushdie's The Free Radio on page 77 of the book, The Best Guide, composed by Dr. A. Callum, mobile number 743-286-0010. After these events, the thief's widow, who was now Ram's wife, did not come into town very often, no doubt being too ashamed of what she had made him do, but Ramani worked longer hours than ever before, and every time he saw any of the dozens of people he told about the radio, he would put one hand up to his ear as if he were already holding the blasted machine in it, and he would mimic broadcasts with a certain energetic skill. "Ya Akashvani Hai," he announced to the streets. "This is All India Radio. Here is the news." A government spokesman today announced that Ramani Rickshaws Wala's radio was on its way and would be delivered at any moment. And now some playback music. After which he would sing songs by Asha Bhosle or Lata Mangeshkar in a high, ridiculous falsetto. Ram always had the rare quality of total belief in his dreams, and there were times when his faith in the imaginary radio almost took us in, so that we half believed it was really on its way, or even that it was already there, cupped invisibly against his ear as he rode his rickshaw around the streets of the town. We began to expect to hear Ramani, around a corner or at the far end of a lane, ringing his bell and yelling cheerfully, "All India Radio. This is All India Radio." Ending O. Now we are going to read the text of Salman Rushdie's The Free Radio on page 78 of the book, The Best Guide, composed by Dr. A. Callum, mobile number 743-286-0010. Time passed. Ram continued to carry the invisible radio around town. 1 year passed. Still, his caricatures on the radio channel filled the air in the streets. But when I saw him now, there was a new thing in his face, a strained thing, as if he were having to make a phenomenal effort, which was much more tiring than driving a rickshaw, more tiring even than pulling a rickshaw containing a thief's widow and her 5 living children and the ghosts of 2 dead ones, as if all the energy of his young body was being poured into that fictional space between his ear and his hand, and he was trying to bring the radio into existence by a mighty, and possibly fatal, act of will. I felt most helpless, I can tell you, because I had divined that Ram had into the idea of the radio all his worries and regrets about done, and that if the dream were to die, he would be forced henceforth to face the full gravity of his crime against his own body, to understand that the thief's widow had turned him, before she married him, into a thief of a stupid and terrible kind, because she had made him rob himself. And then the white caravan came back to its place under the banyan tree, and I knew there was nothing to be done because Ram would certainly come to get his gift. Ending of page 79 of the book, The Best Guide, composed by Dr. A. Callum, mobile number 743-286-0010. Now we are going to read the text of Salman Rushdie's The Free Radio on page 79 of the book, The Best Guide, composed by Dr. A. Callum, mobile number 743-286-0010. He did not come for 1 day, then for 2, and I learned afterwards that he had not wished to seem greedy. He didn't want the health officer to think he was desperate for the radio. Besides, he was half hoping they would come over and give it to him at his place, perhaps with some kind of small, formal presentation ceremony. A fool is a fool, and there is no accounting for his notions. On the 3rd day, he came. Ringing his bicycle bell and imitating weather forecasts, ear-cupped as usual, he arrived at the caravan. And in the rickshaw behind him sat the thief's widow, the witch, who had not been able to resist coming along to watch her companion's destruction. It did not take very long. Ram went into the caravan gaily, waving at his armed bandit who were guarding it against the anger of the people, and I am told, for I had left the scene to spare myself the pain, that his hair was well oiled and his clothes were freshly starched. The thief's widow did not move from the rickshaw, but sat there with a black sari pulled over her head, clutching at her children as if they were straws. After a short time, there were sounds of disagreement inside the caravan, and then louder noises still, and finally the youths in armbands went in to see what was becoming, and soon after that Ram was frog marched out by his drinking chums, and his hair grease was smudged onto his face and there was blood coming from his mouth. His hand was no longer cupped by his ear. And still, they tell me the thief's black widow did not move from her place in the rickshaw, although they dumped her husband in the dust. Yes, I know, I'm an old man, my ideas are wrinkled with age, and these days they tell me sterilization and God knows what is necessary, and maybe I'm wrong to blame the widow as well. Why not? Maybe all the views of the old can be discounted now, and if that's so, let it be. But I'm telling this story and I haven't finished yet. Some days after the incident at the caravan, I saw Ramani selling his rickshaw to the old Muslim crook who runs the bicycle repair shop. When he saw me watching, Ram came to me and said, "Goodbye, Teacher Sahib, I am off to Bombay, where I will become a bigger film star than Shashi Kapoor or Amitabh Bachchan even." "I am off, you say?" I asked him. "Are you perhaps traveling alone?" He stiffened. The thief's widow had humbled in the presence of elders. "My wife and children will come also," he said. It was the last time we spoke. They left that same day on the down train. After some months had passed, I got his first letter, which was not written by himself, of course, since in spite of all my long ago efforts he barely knew how to write. He had paid a professional letter writer, which must have cost him many rupees because everything in life costs money, and in Bombay, it costs twice as much. Don't ask me why he wrote to me, but he did. I have the letters and can give you proof positive, so maybe there are some uses for old people still, or maybe he knew I was the only one who would be interested in his news. Anyhow, the letters were full of his new career. They told me how he'd been discovered at once, a big studio had given him a test, now they were grooming him for stardom. He spent his days at the Sun and Sand Hotel at Juhu Beach in the company of top lady artistes. He was buying a big house at Polly Hill, built in the split-level mode and incorporating the latest security equipment to protect him from the movie fans. The thief's widow was well and happy and getting fat, and life was filled with light and success and no questions asked alcohol. They were wonderful letters, brimming with confidence, but whenever I read them, and sometimes I read them still, I remember the expression which came over his face in the days just before he learned the truth about his radio and the huge mad energy which he had poured into the act of conjuring reality, by an act of magnificent faith, out of the hot thin air between his cupped hand and his ear. Ending the text of page 81 of the book, The Best Guide, composed by Dr. A. Callum, mobile number 743-286-00